I'm Emily Walker, I'm 34 years old, and I'm standing in probate court, heels planted, pulse steady, watching Vanessa, my younger sister, sneer across the aisle, "You're no real heir." Her lawyer grins like he's already counted the inheritance check. He tells the judge that my mom put forward updated wishes before she passed away. I don't flinch, I nod once. My attorney slides a single sealed envelope across the bench to Judge Jenny Murphy. The seal breaks, paper rustles. The room hushes like it knows something's coming. Vanessa rolls her eyes and starts to talk, but I raise one finger to hush her. "Let the letter speak," I say to her in a firm voice. The judge scans the letter, her eyes sharpening. A small gavel tap restores order. The reading of the letter begins. I inhale and brace myself. They have no idea what's coming next. Before I tell you what led to this seismic moment and the revelations sealed inside that letter, drop a comment to tell me where you're listening from. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any gripping family revenge stories. I did not become calm by nature. I learned it like tying shoes. My calm started in our kitchen, under the soft light by the sink, where Mom sorted papers after dinner and told me what each one meant. She showed me how to turn care into steps. When I stand in court and slow my breath, I am standing on those steps. I was 6 when my dad died, and I was 8 when Mom remarried. Daniel Hart is the name of the man I learned to call Dad. He was gentle and allergic to raised voices. He liked lists on the fridge and shoes lined up by the door. He said he wanted harmony, and he meant it. But harmony can be a blanket that hides lumps on the couch. When I was 9, my half-sister was born, pink and loud. Vanessa. The house bent around her the way a room bends around bright sunlight. It was not evil, it was gravity. Mom saw the bend and pushed back with small actions. At the wedding, she did not let me fade into the pews with cousins. My name was printed in the program under Children of the Bride. She put her hand on my shoulder and introduced me with clear words. "This is my daughter Emily." That sentence landed like a floor under my feet. She saved church directories where both daughters were listed and tucked them into a box. When the main album leaned toward photos of Dad holding Vanessa, Mom made a small album that was just us two. On the back of each picture she wrote who we were, where we were, and why it mattered. I still hear the scratch of her pen when I turn those prints over. At school and at the doctor, Mom kept me in the loop. When I got my first email, she added it to forms. She forwarded confirmations to me, not because I needed them then, but because she wanted me to learn the pattern. She told me that family is partly made of paper. Calendars, signatures, receipts. Love lives in stories, she said, but it lasts in records. The heirloom signal started with a small oval locket. It had belonged to my great-grandmother. The rule, Mom said, was simple. The firstborn daughter would wear it at her graduation, and later it would be entrusted to whoever did the work to organize that graduation. Traditions survive because someone does the work, she told me. I watched her steady hands and knew what kind of daughter I was becoming. In public spaces, details slip. An usher hears the hearts, seats the 3, and hesitates when I do not match the neat picture. I do not look like Dad. Eyes drift to him for a cue. At potlucks, someone says, "This is our family," and their gaze rests on Dad and Vanessa because that is the shape they know. No one means to cut me out. The frame just crops wide on one side. Mom corrected the frame. She would stop a greeting, smile, and start again. "These are my daughters, Emily and Vanessa." When a church program missed my name, she emailed the office with a gentle note, copied me, and saved the thread. When the holiday card drafts came back with only 3 lines, she asked for 4. She had me help sign them so both names moved across the cards together. Our kitchen became a refuge. After the dishwasher hummed, Mom made late tea. We sat in that narrow light and talked through the day. She told family stories. She showed me how to label a folder so we could find it fast. "Being less visible in photos does not make you less mine," she said. The words felt like warm bread. I ate them and believed her. At my graduation, I wore the locket. Mom clasped it behind my neck. She organized every moving part of the day. By our tradition, the locket stayed with whoever did the work, so after my graduation it stayed with her. Years later, when it was time for Vanessa to graduate, Mom and I built the checklist together: venue, invitations, food, rides for elders, a photo spot. I ran the board. After the party, Mom stood and thanked me. Then she said the sentence that carried weight in our house: "You know what this means." Dad had a rule for almost everything: one photo is enough, do not make a scene. Keep things simple. It made small moments easier, but it also trimmed truth. When someone asked for a group shot, he gathered the three of them because Vanessa was little and wiggly and waiting would make her cry. I stepped out of the frame and held the coats. People praised me for being such a helper. The word helper is sweet when you are 10, it can feel like exile when you are grown. Emily is strong, Dad would say. It sounded kind, but over time it meant I could do without. The trio moved forward and I padded behind, making sure the door did not slam. I do not think he meant harm. He wanted peace and I could get my own sweater. Mom pushed back without turning it into a fight. She told me that strong did not mean invisible. She kept my name on the logistics. If a calendar invite went out, it had 2 recipients. If a message to the school went in, it came from both of us. Once I saw her speak to Dad low and firm while I put dishes away. Later she said, "We will not erase you to keep things neat." That promise fit under my skin like armor. People call me reliable as if I was born with a clipboard. I was not. Mom mentored me. She sat at the table and showed me a utility bill. Due date here, account number here. She explained notarization and when we would need one. We built a binder with colored tabs for medical, school, church, and legal. We printed an index for the front. We put the originals in a small fireproof pouch on the top shelf of the hall closet. I carried a spare key in an envelope with my name on it. She had me write emails from us so I could practice tone: clear, brief, polite, with dates and numbers spelled out. We sent them and printed a copy for the binder. I learned that neat stacks are not control, clear labels are control. Vanessa loved stages. She had a voice that carried and eyes that pulled a room toward her. I loved checklists in back halls. Mom told us both that we were necessary. When Vanessa sang at church, I stood by the side door with an extra microphone battery and a roll of tape. I did not feel lesser. I felt useful. Mom never used the word executor in front of the family, not then, but she said other words. Some jobs need stamina and clean hands, you have both. She had me take notes at the bank in my own handwriting so I would trust my notes later. She taught me to scan and back up twice. It became a ritual. Scan, back up, check the backup. She was not training me to be a servant. She was training me to be steady when the floor tilted. When Mom's illness came back, it did not crash. It settled like a shadow across our house. Mom did not want a stage. She wanted order. She made lists and stuck to them. She did not ask, "Why me?" She asked, "What needs doing?" We sat at the table again, not with fear, but with pens. She paired stories with objects and labels. The recipe for sweet bread went into a tin with a note under the lid that said who should keep it and why. The old fountain pen went back into its case with a slip that read, "Use this when you begin things." She took the locket to a jeweler to freshen the clasp. She asked for a small plate inside to hold initials. She had the line laid out with space for the next steward's mark. She kept love and logistics separate. She said again that executorship, when the time came, was about reliability and paperwork stamina, not worth or affection. "If anyone tries to turn it into a contest of love, they are lying to themselves," she said, soft voice, iron truth. She asked me to keep procedures calm, protect truth, do not stain memory. That line became a rule. She did not want a war around her name. She wanted clarity and care. We timed the locket handoff. Because I had organized Vanessa's graduation, the rule said it should pass to me. Mom chose to do it formally. On a Sunday afternoon, with Aunt Nora at the table and the sun low, Mom placed the locket in my hand. We took a small photo. We wrote the date. We added a short note to the binder. No trumpets, just clarity. A hospice social worker named Rosa Alvarez visited and sat with us. She had a voice like shade in summer. She said that stories fade, but paper and people keep them standing. She suggested we pair each important story with an object and a document. It was not about court. It was about making the truth easy to carry. With Rosa's advice in mind, we met with an attorney named Ava Chen. We did not go to fight anyone. We went to make things clean. We checked the will. We drafted a letter from Mom that affirmed both daughters and named me executor for practical reasons. The language was plain. Because I am reliable and calm with paperwork. At home, we set up bedside confirmations. Aunt Nora came. 2 church elders came, Deacon Samuel Ortiz and Sister Leela Monroe. Mom spoke her wishes while we recorded with a small device they could see and hold before we pressed the button. We logged the date and who was present. We sealed the files. We made a list of where the files lived and who had heard the words with their own ears. Mom tucked brief notes into heirlooms, a slip in the recipe box, a tag on the quilt, a card in the fountain pen case. The point was to strap intent to the object so it would not slide away if voices grew loud later. Rosa nodded. Good, she said. You are making it simple for the future. Mom asked me for a promise. Look after your sister, she said. She did not mean rule her, she meant be steady, keep the record clear, and do not let anger write the script. I promised. I did not feel noble. I felt assigned. The locket sits first in the ledger, the rule is set. The firstborn daughter wears it at her graduation. The person who organized that graduation keeps it until the next handoff. Inside the chain packet is a card that lists the names of stewards. After Vanessa's graduation, I wrote my initials on the blank line while Aunt Nora watched. We added a photo to the album, me wearing it at my graduation, Vanessa smiling at her party as Mom handed it to me. The captions are clear. The recipe box is a tin the color of old sky. The cards inside are smudged with grease from years of use. Mom's script runs over flour and sugar and eggs. A tiny key opens the lid. The key lives in a taped envelope under the lid with a note, to the daughter who keeps the calendar and feeds the people. The index tabs are by occasion, holidays I hosted, church events I coordinated. Vanessa's birthday dinners I planned when she was busy with a show. The fountain pen rests in a felt slot inside a plain case. The slip of paper under it reads, "Use this when you begin things." I used it to sign my first apartment lease. I made an ink log and wrote the date and what began. There is a space for the next entry, and I know what I will write when this story turns. The quilt hangs over the den chair. The pattern is simple squares, but in one corner each woman who has done a year of caretaking has sewn her initials. Mom stitched mine in the year I ran Vanessa's college forms and the church fundraiser at the same time. I pricked my finger and kept going. A tiny dot of blood on the underside of one square still makes me smile. It means I was there. The photo album master index lives on the top shelf. On the inside front cover in my hand is my name as the indexer. The first page tells how to add captions so no one vanishes. The sticky note rule is written out, write who, where, and why it mattered. Do not assume the viewer knows. The album is not just pictures. It is a map back to our lives when the edges get fuzzy. Everything I have told here is why I could stand in that courtroom and keep my voice even. The wound I carry is not that Mom loved me less. She loved me with receipts. The wound is what public pictures can do to a person when people want things smooth and simple. It makes some of us look like extras in our own home. I am not an extra. I am the daughter who kept the calendar and fed the people. I am the daughter who learned that stories need paper and witnesses to stand up straight. When the illness darkened our door, Mom did not hand me a sword. She handed me a binder, a pen, and a set of rules. She did not ask me to win. She asked me to keep the truth from being erased. That is what I intend to do. I did not wait for the blow. I watched the air for the small dents that come before it. In blended families, the hit almost never looks like a fist. It looks like a form filled out at a kitchen island while someone pours coffee and says it is for the good of everyone. It looks like a new story told in the easy voice of keeping things simple. After Mom's illness came back and she put her papers in order, I listened even harder. I knew which soft words were early alarms. The first signal was a pause wrapped in sugar. Vanessa lingered after church and told friends Mom had been reconsidering formalities. She smiled as if formalities were dusty boxes, not the documents that keep a family honest. She said Mom wanted less red tape so she could rest. People nodded. I wrote down the date, the place, the exact phrase, and who nodded. I was not eavesdropping, I was auditing. Dad's signal came dressed in kindness. He started to say, "Let us keep things simple more often." Simple has a history in our house. Simple means fewer people at the table, fewer eyes on the facts. When I offered to go through the files with him, he said he did not want to burden me. That phrase is a robe for moving a person to the edge of a room. I smiled. I kept my seat. Instead of confronting them, I moved to paper. I kept a log in plain language, date, place, words, and witnesses. Families are small governments with no training. An audit is a gift when people are about to spend truth like loose change. I also met with Ava Chen in her quiet office. I told her I wanted clean lines, not fireworks. We reviewed Mom's will and the bedside confirmations. We checked signatures, dates, and witnesses. We backed up digital files and set up paper copies where they could be reached fast. Ava walked me through the first hearing: file, notice, short calendar, a judge who likes order. "Courts prefer calm," she said. "If someone pushes a different story, let the paper speak." We built an evidence map. It listed Aunt Nora, Deacon Samuel Ortiz, and Sister Leila Monroe as witnesses to Mom's bedside words. It listed where the recordings were stored and who had handled them. It listed correction emails from the church and the program where Mom wrote both daughters' names in her own hand. The map was not a weapon. It was a path for tired minds to follow back to truth. While we set the legal ground, I examined the ground under the family home. Mom had shown me the filing number years ago, and we had a copy in the binder. I traced the mortgage note and the deed of trust. A mid-size portfolio was selling assets. If a note is moving, you can catch it if you are steady and polite. I called, I waited on hold, I learned the language, and I listened. I formed a small company named Maple Bridge Holdings, a simple limited liability company with a quiet name. I opened a clean bank account for it. I used the fountain pen because beginnings matter, but on the documents I used the company's name, not mine. Through a broker for that portfolio, Maple Bridge Holdings bought the mortgage note and the deed of trust by assignment. When the assignment was complete, I read the covenants: due on transfer, notice requirements, acceleration rights. I was not hunting for novelty. I wanted the handles the law already offered. I kept the payments current, on time, to the cent. I wanted no noise. Power should be quiet until the day it has to speak. I did not tell the family what I had done. I did not tell Ava yet. She would not have stopped me, but I wanted her eyes clean in court. The fewer secrets she carried, the steadier her voice would be. Then I drafted the triggers in plain language any clerk could follow. The notice of acceleration said this: any attempted transfer, refinance, or title claim that excluded the named executor of the estate would count as a transfer under the due on transfer clause and would trigger acceleration. The deed already said that any transfer outside its terms could be a breach. I tied the legal trigger to a public act. The moment Vanessa filed to name herself sole heir and exclude me, the trigger would trip. I prepared a cover page that listed the clause number, the assignment reference, and a single phone number for resolution. I met a specialist foreclosure lawyer who spoke in a low, even way. We made a plan. If the trigger tripped, he would file the action that hour and my process server would serve notices in the courtroom. The goal was not to take the house. The goal was timing. The house had become Vanessa's favorite symbol of primacy. I wanted that symbol under my hand, not to hurt her, but to stop the erasure she had already started. While the documents baked, I worked on the room. Paper wins the law, but people decide what sticks to your name. I invited Aunt Nora to the hearing. I called Deacon Ortiz and Sister Monroe. I called Dad's golf friends, Carl Benton and Hugh Price. I said, please come for support. I did not ask them to take sides. I only said, we will follow Mom's documents. I said it the same way every time, a steady bell in a crowded place. I also worked on myself. I wrote down my tells. When I am angry, my jaw tightens. When I am hurt, my throat gets hot. When I want to run, my foot taps. I practiced stillness in a mirror. It was not vanity, it was rehearsal. I cut caffeine to keep my hands steady. I ate simple food. I made a small pocket card that read, "Do not argue, do not justify, let the paper talk." I read it each morning and each night until it felt like breath. The sealed letter needed its own ritual. Ava folded the pages and checked every line twice. We placed Mom's letter inside with a short cover sheet listing the witnesses and the dates of the bedside recordings. We attached a chain of custody affidavit signed by me and by Aunt Nora that said where the letter had been kept and who had touched it. The court clerk watched us seal it and signed and dated over the flap. When you want a letter to change a room, you make that room trust the letter first. Then I built the timeline. Grief follows patterns. In the 2 weeks after a funeral, people reach for control. Vanessa has always reached for the nearest wheel. I circled 2 likely hearing dates based on the court calendar. I set reminders 2 days before each date, then again the morning of. I hired Michael Reed, a process server with courtroom experience, to wait in the hall with 3 packets. One for Vanessa, one for Dad as a possible co-occupant, and one for Mark Ellison, the lawyer I knew Vanessa would choose because he loves the phrase, updated wishes. I built forks into the plan. If Vanessa delayed her filing, we would wait and let the letter do its work later. If she tried to transfer the house quietly, the assignment would surface on the record and the due-on transfer clause would bite. If she filed to name herself sole heir and executor, we would serve the acceleration notice in the room on the record under the eyes I had invited. During those weeks, Vanessa tested sentences in public. At a dinner with Dad's friends, she said, "Mom wanted the house to stay with the immediate household because Emily is grown and has her own place." People nodded because it sounded fair. I said one line. "We will follow Mom's documents." I saw Hugh Price relax as if someone had turned off a buzzing light. Mark Ellison began to orbit. He used words that sound wise when you are tired. Streamlining, minimizing complexity, keeping it close. They all do the same job. They draw a circle that leaves someone out and claim it is fair because the circle is neat. I wrote the words down next to his name. I did not need them to fight. I needed them to remember the script I was already watching. Ava and I rehearsed our part like a short play. She would rise, offer the sealed envelope, and ask the judge to read it into the record. She would not spar, she would not push back when Mark tried to paint me as supportive only. "People try to talk over paper," Ava said. "We will not." I added that sentence to my pocket card. While we practiced the law, I practiced the promise I made to Mom: protect truth, do not stain memory. I did not hate Vanessa. She grew up at the center of the trio, and rooms turned to face her as easily as sunflowers. I had been the hand that held coats. You cannot blame a person for the way adults pointed the camera, but you can move the frame and hold it steady. That would be my job. The night before the hearing, I opened the fountain pen case and wrote in the ink log, "Tomorrow begins the protection of the record." I checked the assignment copy, the affidavit of assignment, the acceleration notices, and the prepared foreclosure filing. I checked each envelope for names and addresses. I set the forbearance plan on top, ready to offer if they chose cooperation. It paused the action if Vanessa and Dad followed the estate inventory rules and issued a public correction. No traps, no tricks, only a schedule and respect for Mom's documents. Morning arrived clean and pale. I ate toast. I drank water. I set my breath to my count: in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. I said, "We will follow Mom's documents," like a prayer. I wore the locket not as a trophy but as ballast. The clasp was new and firm. The chain warmed with my skin. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Aunt Nora squeezed my hand. Deacon Ortiz and Sister Monroe sat like oaks. Dad's friends stood with their hands in their pockets and talked about the weather. Vanessa walked in with a dress that gleamed and a smile that could cut paper. Mark Ellison moved beside her with a folder and a polished half-grin. He nodded at me as if we were playing a friendly game. Ava met me by the door. She touched the sealed envelope and then took her hand away and held it still at her side. It was our signal. I breathed in and out. Michael Reed stood near the water fountain with the brown envelope that held the 3 notice packets. He looked like any man waiting his turn for a paper cup. We took our places. Judge Jenny Murphy looked down at us with kind eyes that did not smile and a jaw that meant business. The bench was not a stage, it was a desk given dignity. I liked her at once. Mark spoke first. He used the script I had written down weeks earlier, streamlining, minimizing complexity, keeping the house with the immediate household, updated wishes. He called me helpful. He said I handled slideshows and meals and that I had always been a blessing. Blessing is a word that feels like a kiss on the forehead when what you need is the key to your own door. When it was our turn, Ava stood. She said we had a sealed exhibit containing Mom's letter, signed and witnessed in the months before her death, together with a chain of custody and references to recordings. She asked that the judge open it and read it into the record. She sat. Vanessa scoffed. Dad stared at his hands. The judge weighed the envelope, checked the clerk's signature across the seal, and broke it. Paper rustled like a quiet storm. She read. Her eyes found a current and wrote it. She looked at me, then at Vanessa, and back at the page. She tapped the gavel once to still a cough in the back row. She said, "I will read this aloud." The room leaned forward. I followed my breath count. I did not look at Vanessa. I did not look at Dad. My job in that moment was not to feel, it was to hold. You know what happened next from the opening of this story, but the power of that moment came from this plan. The witnesses in those seats were not an accident. The envelope was not luck. The timing of the service of notices was not a coincidence. It was orchestration done in a low voice over many evenings with a pen that belonged to a woman who loved her daughters and wanted them both seen. What did it cost me to plan it? It cost me the old ache that wakes when someone says I am strong and means I can be set aside. It cost me the small pride that wants to shout, "I told you so," at a room that has never once asked for my side of the story. I paid those costs in quiet. They bought me a posture I could trust, a timeline I could hold, and a lever I could pull without breaking my promise to Mom. I did not plan as revenge. I planned as repair. Think of a levee. The river rose for years. People said we could mop faster. I built a wall so the water would stop chewing at the same soil. The wall was not a threat, it was a boundary, and even in the plan there was a door. The forbearance path was ready. If Vanessa and Dad chose to cooperate with the estate and to correct the public record, the action would pause. They could live in the house. They could grieve. They would simply have to stop using the house as a tool to push me out of my mother's story. The door stood open the whole time. I also kept my promise to protect memory. The letter was love. The mortgage note was leverage. The only sharp thing in the room was the choice to pretend I was not a real heir. That blade was not in my hand. If you want the simple list of how I set the trap, here it is. I tracked the early words that erase a person. I hired an attorney who respects paper. I formed a small company and quietly bought the mortgage note so I could control timing. I tied a lawful trigger to a public act. I invited witnesses whose eyes meant something in our world. I trained my body not to argue. I sealed a letter that would sing when read. I hired a process server who knows how to move like a good sentence. I built forks so the plan could not be pushed off its tracks. When I walked into that courtroom, nothing that happened could truly surprise me. Not the lines Mark said, not the scoff from Vanessa, not Dad's quiet plea for simplicity. Not the way the judge held the envelope and the room exhaled when it opened. A plan like mine does not hope for drama, it banks on gravity. The details that matter most are small, the brown envelope in Michael Reed's hand. The clerk's ink line across the seal. The dates in my notebook that lined up with the court calendar. The names on the bench behind me: Aunt Nora, Deacon Ortiz, Sister Monroe, Carl Benton, Hugh Price. The locket warm against my collarbone, steady as a metronome. The fountain pen waiting for the next entry in the ink log. Today we began the protection of the record. I should tell you how the company came together because details matter when people try to call your control a trick. I chose the name Maple Bridge because it sounds like a street where children ride bikes, not a firm with teeth. I filed with the state, paid the fee, and appointed a registered agent so notices would not miss me. I kept the books straight from day one account, one ledger, every payment labeled. The assignment was a packet, the note copy, the deed of trust, the allonge, and the recorded assignment. I checked the stamp with the county and updated the address for notices to Maple Bridge Holdings. I confirmed with the servicer in writing, quiet is not secrecy, quiet is order. For the acceleration notice, I drafted 3 versions and had the specialist lawyer bless the language. One covered an attempted transfer of title. One covered a petition for sole ownership in court. One covered a refinance request naming only one heir. Each version had blanks for date and case number and cited the exact paragraph in the deed. Each gave clear contact information for a path to cure. I also prepared the human side. I asked Aunt Nora to bring the small leather notebook Mom used for grocery totals and head counts. Anyone in our circle would know it on sight. I did not intend it as evidence. I wanted it in her hands in case Vanessa hinted that my care for paper was cold. That book was warmth made visible. Seeding the narrative was simple. At church, I told the ladies who planned meals that the estate would cover costs for the memorial luncheon and that we would honor Mom's documents. At the hardware store, when Hugh Price asked how I was holding up, I said, working the list Mom left. I did not add that Vanessa was pushing. I did not spread smoke. I let one steady line rise. Keeping myself steady took more than breath counts. I set phone alarms labeled with instructions: unclench jaw, drop shoulders, slow blink, drink water. I taped a note inside my bag. No rebuttals by text. There is a special itch that comes when someone hints you do not belong. It makes your thumbs want to write novels. I kept my phone heavy and my words few. I did not tell Ava about the mortgage until the morning of the hearing. I told her in one sentence by a window so she could look at the sky, not my face. She took a quiet breath and nodded. Separate matter, she said, but it will speak to credibility. She did not ask for the company's name. She did not need to carry it. Redundancy mattered. I printed 3 acceleration packets in case one smudged or someone dropped coffee. I put a 4th in my glove box. I kept 2 copies of the assignment and 2 of the affidavit of assignment. I checked the ink on the seals. People think control is dramatic. It is often this dull. Finally, I tested the timing. I walked the courthouse a week early. I counted the steps from the door to the clerk's window, from there to the courtroom, and from the courtroom to the water fountain where Michael would stand. I found the quietest bench. I found the clock that runs 5 minutes slow. I do not like to be surprised by a hallway. All of this is the less glamorous truth of a clean takedown. It is not a sting. It is a schedule laid over a calendar. It is care. It is love for a woman who taught me that records are kindness to the future. If you think this much order sounds cold, remember that chaos is not warm. It only feels busy. When the judge began to read, I looked at the wooden edge of the table and fixed my eyes on a tiny scratch in the varnish. I let the words move across the room without my face trying to shape them. That was the last act of planning. Trust the work. The room would hear Mom, and then the door I had built into the plan would swing on its hinges. Someone would choose whether to walk through. Someone would choose whether to try to slam it. Either way, the frame would not move. I had said it. It would hold. The church smelled like lilies and rain the day we buried Mom. The slideshow I built ran smooth. People hugged Dad and Vanessa first, then turned to me with the same line. Thank you for organizing everything. I took the nod and kept the casseroles moving. When love has to move, someone must carry the boxes. At the reception, I watched the room the way you watch a river that can rise. Vanessa floated between tables, bright and sure. To a cousin she said she would handle the house like Mom intended. Dad's friends patted her shoulder. I stacked plates and kept my mouth shut. When I know the ending, I do not correct the prologue. That night I set the locket on my dresser and opened the fountain pen case. In the ink log I wrote, "Memorial complete." In my audit notebook I added the day's lines. Who said what, where, and who heard it? Calm handwriting, dates clear, facts over feelings. The filing came fast. Vanessa asked the court to name her sole heir and executor. The petition called me supportive only and leaned on updated wishes and keeping it in the immediate household. Mark Ellison, as predicted, signed as her attorney, polite words, hard push. I printed the petition, slid it under the tab labeled claims, and touched my pocket card, "Do not argue, do not justify, let the paper talk." Ava called me in. We built a short bridge of a response. No speeches, no sparring. We would offer the sealed envelope and ask Judge Murphy to read Mom's letter into the record. We checked the chain of custody note. We set the hearing date and let the plan hold its shape. The morning of the hearing came cool and bright. I ate toast, drank water, and tucked the locket under my collar. In the courthouse hall, Aunt Nora sat with Mom's leather notebook in her hands. Deacon Ortiz and Sister Monroe arrived in their Sunday coats, though it was Thursday. Carl Benton and Hugh Price stood by the wall in tidy jackets. I greeted them with the same line I had used for weeks. "We will follow Mom's documents." Dad arrived first, the skin under his eyes thin with tired. He hugged me, soft and brief. "Let us keep it simple," he murmured. "We will follow Mom's documents," I answered. Vanessa came next, bright dress, bright smile, the look of a person who believes the path is already hers. She kissed Dad's cheek and accepted the murmured praise you give to the person you expect to carry the trophy. Mark Ellison walked at her shoulder with a slim folder and a smooth half grin that had practiced winning. By the water fountain, Michael Reed waited with a brown envelope tucked against his ribs. He looked like any man waiting his turn for a paper cup. We let our eyes meet for half a beat. One small nod passed between us. Then we were strangers again. Inside the courtroom, the air felt like a library where whispering is a rule. The clerk called our case and the scrape of shoes sounded loud. I sat beside Ava with my hands folded and my jaw soft. The locket's chain warmed against my skin like a quiet hand. Mark stood first. He praised my organizational help and called me a blessing. He said Vanessa had been part of the immediate household and that Mom's updated wishes were to keep the home with them and streamline things by naming Vanessa sole heir and executor. He offered phrases like minimize complexity and avoid confusion, which in our family have always meant draw a smaller circle and call it fair. Vanessa added a gloss. She said Mom was proud of how she had stepped up, that Dad needed a simple path and that I had my own life now. Her smile asked the room to clap for good manners. Dad stared at his hands like a man trying to find the right key on a ring with too many. I watched the bench. Judge Jenny Murphy's eyes went to the file more often than to Mark, which told me she planned to ask for our envelope. I did not show relief. The goal was not to win a scene. The goal was to put truth in a chair where it could not be pushed over. Ava rose. "Your Honor, we have a sealed exhibit containing Linda Hart's letter, signed and witnessed in the months before her death. The letter affirms both daughters and names Emily Walker as executor for practical reasons. We ask that the court open it and read it into the record." She sat, no extra words. Vanessa made a breathy sound that wanted to be a laugh. Mark began, "We believe the letter no longer reflects," but Judge Murphy lifted a hand. "I will read the document," she said. The clerk carried the envelope forward. The judge checked the court stamp and the initials across the seal. She broke it with the careful hands of a person who respects paper. Silence took the room by the shoulders. My body tried to rush toward the next hour, to the hard thing I had set in motion outside this door. Not yet, I told myself. One step at a time. The plan is a staircase. While the judge scanned the first page, I ran the checklist in my head. Aunt Nora in place, elders present, Dad's friends on the aisle, Ava steady, Michael in the hall. Acceleration packets printed clean. Forbearance plan ready if cooperation chose to live. Everything I could do had been done. A small memory rose, the kitchen light at night and Mom tapping a stack of papers into a neat edge. Truth needs a flat surface, she would say. The judge's bench looked like the flattest surface in the world. I let that thought cool the heat in my throat. The benches creaked as people adjusted. No one coughed. Mark shifted and tried to wear a curious face. Vanessa watched the judge's mouth like a child waiting for a magician to name her card. Dad risked one glance at me, but I gave him nothing to read. No triumph, no fear. I kept my promise to Mom, protect truth, do not stain memory. The judge began to read. Her voice was even, like a person reading a recipe to someone who wants to get it right. The first lines were not the shock. They were the floorboards. Mom had 2 daughters, both affirmed. Sad how rare that sentence had felt in public. I felt the locket slide a fraction and settle again. I watched the judge's finger track a line, watched her hand turn the page. Paper that had slept in a drawer now carried its own gravity. Around us, the air seemed to listen. Ava slid her legal pad toward me and wrote 3 words, "We stay quiet." I nodded. Doing nothing can be a kind of work. The room had a pace now, and it was not set by Vanessa or by me. It was set by Mom's words. Vanessa whispered. Mark gave the smallest shake of his head. Waiting is not her best skill, but here the pace belonged to a different law, the one that makes people hear plain sentences in a room that records them. The judge turned another page. I let my shoulders drop a notch. Somewhere behind me, Aunt Nora exhaled the tiniest prayer. The elders' faces stayed set, not hard, just ready. These were the eyes I had curated. They would carry today's shape back to the community in words our world trusted. I flashed once on the brown envelope under Michael's arm and let the picture go. Not yet. The second act must follow the first. If you spring a trap before the truth is said aloud, people call it cruelty. If you let the truth stand and then enforce the rules it requires, people call it order. I wanted order with Mom's name on it. The judge looked up. The room held as if someone had balanced a bowl of water on the edge of a table and told us not to breathe too hard. I took one long, even breath with her. The river I had studied for months was rising into the banks I had built. I felt no rush, only the clean click of a plan meeting its hour. We were balanced there, the letter in the judge's hands, Vanessa's petition in the file, Ava calm at my side, Michael a quiet shape beyond the doors, the people who mattered in their seats, the house that had been used as a crown hovering now like any other asset in a ledger. The next sound would tilt the room. I kept my eyes on the bench and my body still. I was ready. I kept my eyes on Judge Murphy as she read. Her voice stayed calm, the kind you trust when your hands are already in the dough. My daughters, she read, and the word daughters rang twice. She read how Mom loved us both and wanted both names on all papers and notes. She read, love is not a contest, grief is not a crown. People shifted on the benches. The air changed from opinion to fact. Then came the weight. Mom named me executor for practical reasons. She wrote that I have patience for forms and calm for storms, that executorship is a job, not a ribbon. She wrote that Vanessa is her bright joy and I am her steady hand and one does not cancel the other. The judge read the date and the witnesses. The sound of the page turning felt like a lock closing. I held the heat behind my eyes where it belonged. This was not a win, this was order. Vanessa's mouth thinned. Dad folded and unfolded his fingers. Mark Ellison looked ready to talk, but the judge finished the last line first. Then she lifted her eyes as if to gather the room. This court recognizes Linda Hart's letter as clear evidence of intent, she said. The will and witness statements align, the court will honor them. She turned to Vanessa. Miss Hart, the letter affirms you as a daughter and beneficiary. It also names Miss Walker as executor for practical reasons. That is a role, not a judgment. Vanessa started, but Mom wanted. The letter speaks for your mother, Judge Murphy said, kind but final. Aunt Nora's fingers were laced so tight the knuckles showed white. Dad's friends stared at the floor as if they had walked into the middle of a movie. Mark tried again. Your Honor, for the sake of household stability, my client proposes. The court will follow the documents, the judge said. She looked at me. Miss Walker, as executor you will coordinate inventory and notices. Most rooms would end the fight here. Mine had a second act and it belonged to timing. Mark shifted to house continuity, speaking of the property as if it were already his client's to manage. He stepped toward the edge of the well with the soft confidence of a man placing a flag. I glanced to the doorway. Michael Reed was there with the brown envelope tucked under his arm. Our eyes met for half a beat. I gave a small nod. Mark was still talking when he said the words sole ownership. On that cue, Michael stepped forward with a quiet "excuse me" that carried farther than a shout. "Service for Vanessa Hart," he said, clear and respectful. He placed the first packet in Vanessa's hands, the second in Mark's, and the third with the clerk. No rush, no show, only the clean motion of a plan meeting its hour. Vanessa stared at the papers. "What is this?" she asked. Dad leaned forward with the look of a man who just found a bill under a stack of cards. Michael answered plain, "Notice of acceleration and a filed foreclosure petition on the property ending with the number 4. Issued by Maple Bridge Holdings, a limited liability company that holds the mortgage note by assignment." He stepped back to the wall, hands folded. Mark snapped, "Your Honor, this is an ambush." "It is a notice," Ava said even. "The deed of trust contains a due-on transfer clause, an attempted transfer by a claim of sole ownership that excludes the named executor counts as a transfer under that covenant. The note holder has accelerated based on that attempt." Judge Murphy weighed the notice, then the file. "The mortgage is a separate matter," she said, "but relevant to equities. It appears the claimant sought to exclude the executor while asserting sole control of the property." She aligned 2 pieces of paper with the side of her hand. "That will not help your credibility, Mr. Ellison." Vanessa looked at me as if the room had gone quiet for our private talk. "Emily, did you do this?" I stayed seated. I kept my voice mild. "I will honor Mom's documents," I said. "The rest follows the covenants already in place." No heat, no brag, just the line. Mark tried to restore theater. "This is punitive," he said. "This is a sister turning on her family." Ava spoke to the bench, not to him. "The note moved months ago by lawful assignment. Payments are current. The acceleration trigger applies to any attempted transfer excluding the executor. Service today followed Miss Hart's own filing for sole ownership. The timing ties the notice to the act." The judge nodded once. "Understood." She turned to Vanessa. "You will want separate counsel for the mortgage issue. For today, your petition to be named sole heir and executor is denied. The will and letter stand." "Miss Walker is executor." She let the words sit in the air until the room felt their weight. "Further, I expect cooperation with the estate inventory and with the executor's requests." The room went still the way a stage does when a curtain drops and no one is sure whether to clap. You could hear shoes scuff. Aunt Nora's shoulders eased. Deacon Ortiz bowed his head. Sister Monroe's eyes shone but did not spill. Dad looked at me as if my name had new edges. "Emily," he said, then stopped. I did not help him. I let the new shape of the day show itself. The judge called the next case. We moved into the hallway. The echo hit after the hush of the courtroom. Michael stood at the window filing proof of service. Vanessa turned to me, voice like glass. "You bought the mortgage." "I kept payments current," I said. "I also prepared for any attempt to erase me from Mom's estate." I did not mention the forbearance path, hallways sharpen pride. Dad reached for my elbow and stopped halfway as if he had remembered something old. "Emily," he said again. He added, careful, "executor." Aunt Nora touched Vanessa's arm. "Your mother loved you," she said. "She also set the plan so you would not have to guess." Mark dropped his voice low and fast. He promised challenges and motions. His words blew like paper in a fan. None could change the record the judge had just made. Ava stepped in. She spoke only to Vanessa and Dad. "There is a simple path," she said. "It starts with cooperation on the inventory, access to records, and a public correction of the claim that Emily is not a real heir. We can also discuss a temporary forbearance with the note holder if conditions are met." She did not look at me when she said note holder. That was grace. Vanessa flushed. I am not posting an apology on the internet. Not the internet, I said. The community that watched Mom live, a letter to the church and a note to the family list. Dad's friend stepped close. Carl Benton said Linda would have wanted that letter read out. Hugh Price added, we always knew you were steady, Emily. We moved to a small conference room to sign routine forms. The clerk, quick and calm, called me Miss Walker, executor, as she pointed to lines for initials and signatures. I signed with the fountain pen in my bag. In my mental ink log I wrote, began estate execution. Vanessa stared at the wood grain. You planned this, she said. I kept my promise to Mom, I said. Protect truth, do not stain memory. You humiliated me, she whispered. No, I said, just above the air vent. Your petition did that. The letter restored the record. The notice enforced it. Mark gathered his folders with hard movements. We will be in touch, he told Ava. We will respond in writing, Ava said. Back in the hall, the elders came to me. Deacon Ortiz said executor with a nod, the way you hand someone a key. Sister Monroe squeezed my fingers. Thank you for letting the letter speak, she said. Aunt Nora hugged me and whispered she would be proud. Dad walked between his friends, smaller and more honest than before. We will keep the peace, he said. For the first time, it did not sound like a demand to hide. It sounded like a promise to do what the paper required. Yes, I said, we will. Vanessa left with Mark, back straight, steps sharp. I did not chase her. I did not gloat. I carried our copy of the notes and the now open letter in its worn envelope. The job had begun. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sky had moved from bright to pale gray. Michael stood by the curb, tucking his receipts into a folder. All set, he said. Thank you, I said. Clean work. He nodded. You followed the rules, he said. In the car, I touched the locket and then the pen case. I breathed until my hands were steady. The letter had done its work. The notice had done its work. I had spoken 3 sentences and each one matched a promise. Truth had a flat surface. My name had a place in my own family's record. And everyone who mattered had heard it. The hallway hummed like a building after a storm. Papers were filed. People had places to be. I let the window glass cool my face. The letter had settled the record. The notice had set the boundary. Now the work would be slow and plain. That was fine. I am good at slow and plain. Ava and I met at a small table to map next steps. Inventory first, she said. Keys, statements, safe deposit box, account lists, titles. I wrote the list. Document every ask, she added. Email and letter, fair deadlines. We agreed to keep every exchange clean, no texts, no calls without a follow-up note. Vanessa and Dad waited near the elevator. Here is what happens next, I said. We will open the box together, gather records, and make a full list for the court. Dad nodded. He did not say simple. That felt like progress. Vanessa's voice was tight. Are you going to take the house? No, I said. I want the records in order and the estate settled. The mortgage is current. If you cooperate and stop trying to cut me out, the note holder can offer a temporary forbearance. If you push for sole control, the process will run. That choice is yours. I left the door open because Mom asked for that kind of mercy. That afternoon, I set up custody. I changed passwords where I had legal authority. I collected keys and logged who had them. I made a mirror copy of the binder for the estate file and locked the originals in the fireproof pouch. I set read-only access for Dad on shared folders so he could see every step. Transparency is not a favor to the loudest voice. It is protection for everyone. Aunt Nora brought soup and the grocery notebook. You doing all right? She asked. I am doing the list, I said. She touched the locket and smiled. We set aside recipe cards for a small memorial cookbook. Work is how grief holds still long enough to breathe. At church, the elders asked for a short note. I wrote, Linda Hart's will and letter affirm both daughters and name Emily Walker as executor for practical reasons. The family thanks you for your care, Sister Monroe read it. The room relaxed a notch. People need clear words in public rooms. I wrote to the wider family. I explained the steps and asked that questions come to me so Dad could rest. We will follow Mom's documents, please resist gossip. Then I called the scholarship committee and funded 2 small awards in Mom's name, one for a student who serves backstage and one for a student who shines on stage. Both daughters' names would be on the certificate. The board said yes. Vanessa stayed silent for 3 days. On the 4th, she sent a note through Ava. She would meet for the safe deposit box and would bring records. She arrived in a plain sweater, slid a folder across the table and said, "I will not fight the paper." At the vault, the clerk rolled the thin drawer out. Inside were title papers, old savings bonds, and a velvet ring box with a note in Mom's hand. For both daughters to share by season, starting with the one who keeps the calendar. I read it aloud and placed the note where it could not drift. Vanessa watched and said nothing. By week's end, I had a clean inventory and a schedule for the appraiser. I set dates for people to pick through closets without a scramble. Each person signed a card with the item they took and the reason. We labeled what would be sold and what would go to cousins who had asked years ago. We attached stories to objects where we could. If you write down why a thing matters, people argue less about who should hold it. I called the servicer and arranged a forbearance subject to conditions. Payments would pause while we completed the inventory and filed the first account. The condition was simple. No more claims of sole ownership and full cooperation with the estate. Vanessa and Dad signed. The edge in the house softened like a door that stopped rubbing the frame. Perception turned. People began to come to me with questions they used to aim at Vanessa. The church office copied me on notices. Dad's friends greeted me by name without the pause that used to scan my face for my relation to the trio. They called me executor, which is not a ribbon, but it is a key. I wore it like a tool belt. There were small losses. A neighbor who loves Vanessa's light stopped saying hello. An old school friend wrote that I had humiliated my sister. I did not reply. I printed it, put it in the file, and made tea. Control is not a shield against unkindness. It is a way to keep facing forward. Vanessa and I spent one quiet morning at Mom's house with trash bags, boxes, and the quilt on the chair. We packed winter coats and sorted cards. She found a photo of the 3 of them and held it like a breath. "I love this picture," she said. "I know," I said. I did not add that Mom kept a paired photo of us 2 with a note on the back. Today was for work, not for lessons. When we finished, I locked the door and waited while Vanessa slid her hand down the frame as if soothing a horse. "I can help with the cookbook," she said. "I have a story about the soup that burned and how Mom laughed." "Write it," I said. "We will put your name under it," she nodded. A narrow bridge is still a bridge. By the time the first account was ready for the court, the house felt square again. Records sat in neat files. The scholarship fund had a date for its first awards. The elders held the letter in a sealed sleeve. People had heard the phrase "both daughters" enough times to relax into it. Reputation is not a speech. It is a rhythm built from the right notes repeated. On the day I mailed the account, I opened the fountain pen case and wrote a line in the ink log, "Filed first account, estate on course." I breathed. The promise I made to Mom had moved into the world. The wound of being almost visible had a stitch through it now, not healed, closed enough to move. I did not call this forgiveness. I did not call it victory. It was alignment. It was the picture on the wall finally hanging straight because someone took the hammer, set the nail, and checked the level twice. My name was on the work order. I signed it, put the pen away, and started the next task. I did not build a trap to crush my sister. I built a frame to hold the truth so it would not slide off the table again. Standing in that courtroom taught me something simple. Some people treat private words like suggestions, but they treat public records like facts. That is why I did not warn them. Warnings invite the next story and the next excuse. Put the same words into a room that writes them down and the stories stop moving. In a blended family, pictures become currency. As a child, ushers looked for the trio and forgot the 4th. The photo was neat, the story was off by 1. A quiet talk in a hallway never fixed that. If I had pulled Vanessa aside before the hearing, she could have shaped a nicer tale for a while and people would have believed the neat picture again. So I chose paper and witnesses. I chose a judge who reads slowly and a clerk who checks seals. I chose Aunt Nora and the elders and Dad's friends because those are the eyes our world trusts. I chose to let Mom's letter speak so it would not be my voice saying I belonged. It would be hers. That choice was not cold. It was kind. It honored my promise to protect truth and not stain memory. Control for me is not a fist. Control is a checklist I can finish without raising my voice. It is doing only what the documents require and refusing the extra drama that begs to be fed. It is calling the bank, not calling names. It is writing the update for the family list, not writing long texts at midnight. I do not need to win a scene. I need to keep my promise and close the account the right way. I also needed to claim my shape in public without turning into the thing that hurt me. I will not erase Vanessa to fix my own erasure. The letter named both daughters. The scholarships carry both kinds of daughters in their titles, the one who serves backstage and the one who shines on stage. That balance is not a show. It is a chosen rhythm. It reminds me that love can hold two truths without making them fight. To anyone who lives in a blended family, here is what helped me. Track patterns, not promises. Write down the dates, the words, and who was in the room. Memory bends toward what is easy to carry. Paper stands up straight. Pair stories with objects and notes. If an heirloom matters, strap a card to it that says who keeps it and why. Build witnesses who count in your community and speak the language your world respects. Time your truth for the room where it will be recorded. Say the right words in the wrong hallway and you will end up chasing whispers. Place those words in a file with a stamp at the top, and the same people who argued with you 10 times will lower their voices and sit down. That is not magic. That is how grown people act when a flat surface holds the facts. Do not confuse mercy with weakness. I offered a forbearance path because Mom raised me to leave a door open. A door does not move the wall, it gives a person a way to walk without breaking it. Mercy is a condition with a schedule, not a surrender to more confusion. When Vanessa chose to cooperate and stop claiming sole control, the door swung. We walked through it without a speech. Keep yourself steady. If your jaw tightens, write it down and practice releasing it. If your throat burns when you are dismissed, drink water and count your breaths. If your thumbs itch to type your hurt, put your phone face down and write a note to yourself instead. No rebuttals by text. You are not weak for needing help to stay calm. You are human. Calm is a skill you earn with practice and rest. I think about Mom every time I sign with the fountain pen. I hear her say, some jobs need stamina and clean hands. I keep my hands clean by staying inside the lines she drew. I keep my stamina by measuring days in finished steps. I do not chase approval. I do not wait for a scene partner. I do my part and let the paper carry the rest. The locket is not a prize. It is a job I accepted and a story I refuse to let anyone trim. What am I now? I am a daughter who refuses to vanish. I am a woman who can sit in a public room and let a letter do the loud work. I am a keeper of timelines and a maker of quiet boundaries. I did not become cold. I became clear. And clarity is not about revenge. It is about respect for the person who raised me, for the sister who is learning, and for myself. If a room keeps cropping you out, build a new frame and invite the right eyes to see it. Do it without poison, do it without gloating, do it with dates and signatures and patience that feels like stone. Then let the record hold. You will breathe easier. Share your own moments of erasure or clean reversals in the comments. I see them all. If this helped you stand up straighter, pass it on to someone who needs it. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss new stories just like this one.